called Reflections on the Death of a Porcupine. You know, there's not many people from his generation who would write a book called Reflections on the Death of a Porcupine. He went out and shot a porcupine on his property one night or morning, and he felt bad about it afterwards. And so he wrote the whole long essay short book on that subject, and I think it's a great little book. I would use it in these classes if I had time, but I don't have time. That was actually written in America, and he's got, for instance, poems called The Snake, about a snake he sees in his house in Sicily where he's living near Mount Vesuvius that goes into the water trial, a dangerous, poisonous looking snake, and he won't kill it. He won't touch it. He is in awe of it. And he writes this tribute to it. It starts off, a snake went into my water trial one day, or something like that. But it's an actually beautiful poem about his encounter with this snake as one of the, you know, masterful creatures of the earth that not only deserves his respect, but which he acknowledges as a, you know, fellow creature of regal proportions. Not something to be feared, but something to be in awe of and admire. So these kinds of things in his literature are, I think, what we would consider to become pre-environmentalist or totally environmentalist. So we have those two aspects of him, which is why I feel justified in reading him together with you people. And I prefer to read him than a lot of other duller subjects that one could think of. Plus, you're going to read a great writer. Now, that's the other point. That sentence I just told you about that starts off this Etruscan places, I'm sure he just wrote it out. He didn't blot it out. He didn't work at it. He didn't study it. He didn't, you know, write it over 10 times. These things just came right off the top of his head. He's a total natural writer. I'm sure this Etruscan places, he went home after visiting these locales. By the way, if you go to Italy and do some touring there, when I was your age, I hadn't read Etruscan places yet. And I was really stupid because I didn't go and visit these Etruscan places. You know, I went into all the boring places that people go to, church after church after church after church, museum after museum after museum after museum, until you're sick to death of everything in them. And because you think you're supposed to go to these places, and all the tourist buses, you know, pull up and they all tramp through these places like good little lemmings and follow the leader people and so on and so forth. Yeah, you do have to go to these places just to know you don't want to keep going to a lot of them. I mean, you have to, my wife says, what do you go to that movie for? I have to go just to know that I don't like it. You know, otherwise I'm an ignorant person. I said, after you watch that movie, I have to do it, I have to do it. I went to see Flags of Our Fathers the other day, and I walked out after 45 minutes, so that was great. I knew it was a piece of junk, and I walked out. You know? And fortunately, the movie died, and I would have done the same with Borat if I had gone to see that one. And unfortunately, that hasn't died yet, but so on and so forth. But, you know, huh? I don't want to get into that digression. That's a long issue, you know, but that guy's exploiting certain things in an unjustified manner, but I don't really want to get into why I think it's sad what he's doing, in fact. But really sad in many ways. But he's benefiting from it. And so. But, you know, I don't have to, as I said, you have to do these things, and I shouldn't speak about Borat because my kids saw it and told me, and they're admirers of him, and even for them it was too much to take. What he was doing in that movie. But the point is that you should go and read things, even if you don't like them, just to know why you don't like a certain thing. You can't not like a thing if you haven't seen or read it. You know, that's really important to actually do that. In any event, to go back to where we were at, how do we get off that particular topic? This gentleman got me really into it, and I didn't want to go that far off. How do we get off into the reading thing?
His background.
Yeah, what about it then?
You were telling us his background.
Yeah, I know, but what?
You're saying he wrote that sentence on the top of his head.
What?
You're talking about how he wrote that sentence.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't read Etruscan Places yet. There you go, thank you very much. That's where I wanted to get to. I hadn't read Etruscan Places yet. If I had, you know, that's what I'm talking about, going through museums and things like that. If I had read Etruscan Places, I would certainly have gone to visit these really interesting locales in central and northern Italy. You know, the whole Italy north of Rome, as he points out here, is really Etruscan. And that's why we call it what?
Tuscany?
Yeah, Tuscany. Tuscany is an English-Italian way of saying Etruscan. And all the arts and crafts and food, great wines, different foods, that Tuscany in artistic production of materials, clothing, fashion, art, and so on, that the Renaissance taking place in Tuscany and so on that is known for, really comes out of Etruscan civilization. So under the Roman overlay that Lawrence considers brutal, is this earlier native culture, which he considers, maybe he's imagining it, splendid. And in his imagination, having visited the tombs and things of this civilization, he portrays what it is in this civilization that is splendid, and it is a religious message for us. Basically, it's the, well, I can't put it the way he can put it, which is why we'll have to read through it in a moment, but it's the quick sweep of life, I suppose you put it. I can't really, the vitality. And of course, the person who's dying of tuberculosis himself would feel that. I was telling you about Lady Chatterley's Lover and the plot and the effect it had. You see, Lawrence is both the person in the wheelchair, because he isn't functioning sexually anymore as a tuberculosis victim, and he's both the person in the wheelchair, so-called in American English, well, more English expression, being cuckolded, as they would refer to it, and the man doing the cuckolding, and the gamekeeper. The gamekeeper who he loves the gamekeeper, because the gamekeeper is his symbolic of the man in a state of nature person. That's why he's the gamekeeper. And he's feral and so on. And in this Etruscan Places, he's going to meet this old kind of man as he steps out of the primordial past. And he calls him in this book the Faun Man. The Faun Man, and the man, he says, who were killed off in the Great War, in the First World War. He says,